Hi, I'm Brandon Bushnell, survival hobbyist and a man with too much money spent on military gear. I'm here to talk to you about the creation of a bug out bag. The thing about survivalism is that no matter how big your gun is or how much gear you have, you're not getting anywhere without the right mindset. More than a lack of shelter or water, panic is your most deadly enemy. When you panic, you forget vital pieces of information and make mistakes more easily. So, when you find yourself in a disaster situation, before you reach for your bug out bag, stop, take a deep breath, and think. Survivalists have something called the Rule of Three that allows us to prioritize our survival needs. Rule 1 is that a person generally cannot live longer than 3 hours in extreme heat or cold. So shelter, either a poncho or a parka liner like this one, to tents and sleeping bags, are a priority. Second, a person cannot live without a person cannot live more than 6 days without water. And third, a person cannot live 9 weeks at the very most without food. That's the rule of three. Like I was saying earlier, shelter is your first priority in a survival situation. Now, if you have the luxury of something more traditional like a tent and sleeping bags, that's great. But in terms of your bug out bag, you want to have something that is compact and light. In most cases, you'll have something like this, which is a parka liner. It's waterproof and very thin, reasonably tolerable for various temperature conditions, or you might have a poncho, whichever you prefer. Also, to create various types of shelter, you'll have what's called 550 or parachute cord. Very strong, but also very light material. You can find it in black, tan, green, various military or nature type colors. And this is one of my pouches that contains a number of things that generate fire and help you build shelter, that all contribute to your physical safety in the event of rain, extreme cold, or extreme heat. First I'll finish up shelter by showing you a chainsaw that fits in this can here. What it is literally a chainsaw. This item comes out and unfolds with the teeth that you're used to seeing on a gas-powered chainsaw. The hooks attach at the ends, and with each hook you can tie these handles to give you a good range of control around a large log or branch from which you can pull back and forth and saw it off. All of that fits within this small can here. Secondly, we have fire starting material. Of course, matches are your first line for convenience, also lighters. But without the luxury of something that is vulnerable to moisture and things like that, you also have items like this, which is a magnesium fire starting rod. And basically what this thing is, it has two parts to this little block. On one side has material which you shave off with a knife. I'm not doing it very vigorously, but in the event that you're trying to build a fire, you would actually dig more deeply and create a small pile of this material with twigs and dry leaves and things that will easily catch fire. Once you've established that, what we call kindling, you take your knife, press firmly into the magnesium rod, taking care to make sure your fingers are out of the way of the blade, and strike. If you do this correctly and with enough patience, you'll have a fire in a very reliable way. The next priority is water. These look cool, military canteens, but they're only 1 quart, and they're made of thick, heavy plastic. The problem is, according to the American Red Cross, you need 4 of these per day per person at minimum, which will look something like this. So consider how you'd like to transport water in the event of emergency. Depending on how big your bug out bag is and what you're preparing for, you could need 3 to 7 days worth of water for either yourself or maybe your entire family. That adds up to a lot of weight and a lot of space. Something to consider. The next thing, of course, is food. This is an MRE. It stands for Meals Ready to Eat. The United States military uses these predominantly because of their lightweight and compactness. And again, that's what I'm talking about, is that you already have 1 gallon per person per day that you're carrying. Perhaps if you're just by yourself, 3 to 7 of these. With a family of 4, several dozen. So you want to save as much weight and size as possible. These are a great option for that. These actually usually run from 1,400 calories to 2,000 calories per meal. It's a lot of energy that you can ration, and they're very compact. But if you don't have the money for these, they roughly run $10 per meal. There are a lot of things you can do, like top ramen and certain other compact foods. But I definitely recommend considering, if you can budget for them, the MRE. Another thing to consider is medical equipment. When you're in a disaster situation, and they vary greatly, the different kinds of disaster situations, you never know what's going to happen to you or a loved one, someone in your party. So having some degree of medical equipment or first aid equipment is very important. Kits range in all sizes. You can have very small personal kits like this, which is roughly the size of my palm. You can have slightly larger military style individual first aid kits. And you could have the more consumer based, the more civilian type that is for camping or general family outing sort of first aid kit. Basically, I'd say the more compact, the more light. That's the general rule with all of our equipment you can get. The most you can spend on it. You don't want to skimp on your own survival. You don't want to save when you might need this equipment someday to save your life or the life of a loved one. And also, I'd recommend go and take a basic first aid class, whether it be put on by your local fire department or by the Red Cross or some similar organization. Get some basic training, learn how to use the equipment in your kit. Now I'm going to talk about some things that aren't necessarily required in your kit or required for your survival, but I personally, if I had the chance to add these to my kit, I wouldn't miss that chance. One thing, communication, radios. This is a FRS radio that you pick up at Radio Shack, Walmart, that kind of place. Fairly cheap, requires no license to operate. This is a GMRS radio that has a slightly higher range, requires an FCC license, and is a little bit more expensive. Either way, pick one of them. They're invaluable for communication when you have to split up for any brief amount of time, or maybe you're in 2 vehicles, anything like that. Communication is very important when traveling in a group. Edit slash thing. Okay. Also, hand tools, very important. This is called an entrenchment tool. It's basically a shovel that folds up. It's compact, fairly light, allows you to get the job done for pretty much all your small shovel survival needs. Also can be used as a bludgeon. Very good for zombies, smashing the head, destroying the brain. It's very important for the zombie apocalypse. Also, you have this multi-tool, small hand hatchet. Also has a pry bar at the end and a hammerhead. A couple things you don't want to be without if you have the choice. Last but not least, I want to talk about protection, personal protection. Now, I know that firearms are a touchy subject sometimes with progressives like myself, but when it comes down to certain situations, certain survival situations, you're going to need protection, or at least a means of hunting or procuring food in that kind of way. What I have here is the M4 carbine, a Bushmaster with a 30-round magazine, semi-automatic. It's my favorite rifle. It's my primary rifle. But in a lot of situations, all you'll need is something more like this. A bolt action 22. Very small route. Very good though for small animal hunting like squirrels and rabbits and that kind of thing. With a powerful scope that allows you to accurately fire on small prey. So I'd like you to at least consider either a firearm or something perhaps non-lethal like a taser, because depending on your situation, depending on where you're based out of, there can be very real threats to your safety, and this is something for you to consider.